today, in a way, the new defining factors for many people, many countries, many cultures around the world is no longer ideology, but identity. Who am I? How do I define myself vis-à-vis my neighbor, vis-à-vis my community, and vis-à-vis the others? My point is really, how can we live together beyond all those differences? Being religious, being ethnic, being linguistic, being everything, and how shall we revise or reinvent identity? Let me just take a very short story, which I think we are here in the UK, close to London. There was a fascinating story that has happened in the Olympics. What was 2 or 3 years ago in London? Does anybody know here Leo Manzano? Does it ring any bell? No. Interesting story that has happened with Leo Manzano. Leo Manzano was an American athlete who won the silver medal for the 1,500 meters running. And so he won, he was a second in the race, and then he did what typically athletes are doing after the race. He ran around the stadium with the flag. And then after a few meters, he took so that was the American flag. And then he took a second flag, Mexico. The kid was born in Mexico. And his parents moved from Mexico to the US when he was 4. Illegally, no matter, And so he went to the system, he went to school, he went to the championship US team. And then in a totally unpredictable way, and probably a very spontaneous way, he took this flag as a way to say, I have a double identity. And in a way, I have a double legitimacy, loyalty. Loyalty to the country that made me the athlete that wins the silver medal, and I'm very proud of that. But I have my own roots. I have my own culture. I have my own language. I have my own belief. I have my own values. And I want to claim that I can live with both. They are perfectly compatible. And the interesting thing, and the reason why I'm telling you this story, first it's because I think that probably everyone here is thinking and say, well, what do I think about that? And probably, because we are here, I think that we are all probably leaning on Manzano's side. But you can go in front of very different audience and there will be people who say, no, this is a betrayal. And this is what happened, because I was at that time in New York with the UN, and one of my colleagues came to my office and he knew that I was interested in those issues. He said, you should look on the social networks. And I think I have never seen in my whole life such an escalation on the social networks. This guy is betraying. If he's not happy in the US, he can go back to his poverty in Mexico and have no food and no electricity and criminality and other things. Oh, but what's the point? He has a double identity. This is really nothing. And I found that this story very telling about the situation where we are, where in a way you have people who consider today that identity is one block, and you are coming from this neighborhood. This is your community. This is your family. This is your everything. And then you have people who have a totally different perspective, who say, I'm a multi-layer. That's what Amin Malouf, this very famous Lebanese writer, was defining. The new identity is a multi-layer identity. And this is a real debate. And we see, and particularly here in Europe, a very strong debate about that, with the people who say, no, my culture, my tradition, my neighborhood, my everything. And those who say, this is much more complicated and I can live very well in being a double or triple or quadruple dimension. And this led me actually to create what I've in a way tried to identify as the double dilemma of the living together. There are two main dilemmas that in a way try to encapsulate everything. One is that, or if you take, for instance, the compass, you have the 4 points of the compass with two dilemmas, one vertical, one horizontal. The vertical would be, the Monsanto story with people who are, let's say, the tribalism, if we can say, my culture, my roots, my everything. And then on the other side of the compass, you have the people, who are also the other. It's one extreme to the other. And so who, in a way, tend sometimes to dismiss the people who are deeply rooted and who claim their identity and their own culture. So this is, the two extremes, the tribalist and the globalist. And this is what, there was a book a few years ago that was called Jihad versus Macworld. So that was, in a way, to say, the two extremes. And then you have on the horizontal side of the compass, the people who are profoundly and in a way radically secular, to say, we live in a world that is secular, where religion has nothing to do with citizenship, with politics, with governance, with whatever. These are two separate worlds. And then you have on the other side, the other extreme, people who say, we are absolutely nothing in regard of religion and transcendence and enchantment. And in a way, this, again, if we want to take an illustration, the perfect illustration is, everybody has in mind, just a few months ago, what the terrible Charlie Hebdo attack, which in a way is a clear illustration about that, with people who say freedom of speech. I can say whatever because I'm in a secular world, secular society, and I can say and draw any cartoon. And then you have the other extreme or the other point of the compass. People who say no, freedom of speech has one limit, is the respect of religion. And if you go beyond this line, you expose yourself to what has happened. Again, no judgment on my side, just to say that we live in societies where you have people who are radically secular and people who are radically religious. Like you have people who are radically localist and people who are radically... And my point here is to say that, and this is why the title of my speech this afternoon is to give voice to the moderates, is to say that those people who are in a way poisoning the debate and who are eventually putting at risk the societies where we are the radical. But the reality of the society is in between, is about, let's say, 80, 90% of the people who are the moderates, who are the reasonable people, who eventually lean on one side, on the other side, so on specific issues, say, there is a legitimate aspiration of recognition of my culture and my tradition and my identity, and sometimes it's difficult, to accept that it is totally ignored or deleted by the global perspective, and so there are lots of people who are, in a way, willing to try to identify or to find a proper pace and a proper and workable system where we can live together in peace and respect and tolerance and trust. This is why the center is so important. Trust, tolerance. Human being all around the planet yearns for peace and respect. I don't know anybody, and I don't think that anybody here knows many people who are really willing to live in society with clash and tension and conflict. And I think, this is the common denominator of most people around the world, is to live with their family, with their friends, to have a job, and to live in peace and respect. This is what is common to all humanity. regardless of religion, regardless of everything, is that we all want to live in peace and respect with our family and community and friends. And this is why it is so important today, and I think that I will stop, to strengthen and to empower this, what I call the silent majority. Because for now, the debate, because we live in a super media world, the debate is kidnapped or captured by the radical on one side or the other, on one of the 4 points. Because for the media, you need blood. You need something that is strong and tough. And so it's more important than telling the story of Rosine, to say, this is what I'm trying to do, to fix things. And because this is actually where the response lies. It's really about grassroots. It's about people. It's about how can we, the people who roll up the sleeves and say, we are confronted to an issue. I'm not trying to promote one side or the other whatsoever. I want to fix things. I want to have people live in peace and respect. And I think there's a tremendous potential for peace and respect among the people. And what I would really encourage policymakers to do, and government, is really to make a very strong effort to support and to help all those grassroots organizations, to help them to scale up and to replicate. One small initiative here and there, why is it that it cannot be replicated in other countries when it is very innovative and very successful? And I think this is what needs to be done, because interestingly, if you take, you've been following the debate last month, there was in New York at the United Nations, the adoption of the new Sustainable Development Goals for the next 15 years. 16 goals and blah, blah, blah. And the interesting thing here is that if you take the major global issues, climate change, we will have next week in Paris, the big COP21, where hundreds of thousands of people will come to try to fix the climate change issue. If you take, climate change, if you take poverty eradication, the main global issues, they can eventually be sorted out by government. We can, as long as they agree on regulation, they can indeed make a difference and fix the climate change issue. They can fix the poverty issue in putting more money in foreign aid, doing this or that. When it comes to intercultural understanding, when it comes to living together, governments cannot do much. They can, in a way, contribute to create an enabling environment with good policy and regulation. But this is not enough. Government they cannot convince you and I, or whoever, that I have to live with somebody who we hate because I don't know him or her, or that is so different. And so this is the only global issue which is fundamentally in the hands of the people and the people themselves. If you and I are not convinced that diversity is an asset and that living with people who have different culture, different belief, different color of skin or whatsoever can be an asset, and that it is feasible in our society, this will never work. So government have a very limited capacity for an impact. And this is where civil society, grassroots organization, that can play a very, very, very important role.